Pretty Women Hustle. We are back with our Author 101 chat. We are so excited. We have a great show in for you tonight. Pretty Women Hustle. It is the network, the brand dedicated to highlighting and promoting women in business. So, you know, this show is no different. So, Pretty Woman Hustle, we are so glad to have everyone join us in tonight for our special series dedicated to the journey of becoming an author. In this series, we will discuss the process of becoming an entrepreneur from beginning to end. Okay. If you are new here, I am Jakia Chino Miles, the founder and creator of Pretty Woman Hustle, a platform dedicated to highlighting and promoting women doing extraordinary things in business and in faith. Today we have Aziza Sphinx. She has been writing professional for over 20 years. Y'all, 20. She's a vet in the game. Okay. Aziza sees the world through peach, pecan, and canopy of weeping willow trees. Family matters, and not just blood. For those who care for us, are the truest who stand and fall during the winding road. When the hills and valleys of the literary journey summon and the pen becomes mightier than the sword, this is the world Aziza Sphinx breathes for. I love it. Tonight, we are live and discussing all things entrepreneurship with her. If you have ever had a thought of writing a book and sharing your story, this episode is for you because she gives us all her secrets. Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy and glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you. I want to jump into a little bit of the questions and then we'll go into your book summary as we dig deep into your books, okay?
All right.
All right, first things first. How did you develop your interest in writing? How did that happen?
So, my mother was an English teacher. So, I have been surrounded by books since I could, as far back as I could remember. And one of my greatest loves were choose your own adventure books. It really was about being able to figure out how a story could evolve and all the different aspects of, choices that are made to create a story. And so I've actually been writing, as most people say, a lot of us have been writing since we were little kids. I actually started out as a lyricist. So I have a degree in music industry. I don't talk about that too much, but I started out writing song lyrics, and I didn't write really my first full-length novel until around 1995, 96. But once I actually started doing novel writing, the stories started to come to me. I started to find other people who had kind of the similar ideas, who were looking to get their stories told. And we all kind of banded together and we started supporting each other and getting, encouraging each other to, hey, just keep writing.
I love that. To be an encouragement from one another and having a circle like that, that's beautiful. When
And it's
did you
necessary.
realize? Yeah, it's necessary. Totally. Get a group of people that understand what the process and what you're trying to do and push you towards that. Yeah, that's number one. When did you realize you had a story that the world like absolutely needed to hear?
So probably with the third book that I completed, it wasn't necessarily the first book that was published, but it was an opportunity, really, I think, for myself to work through some set of trauma. And when I started to look at the story, even though it was a fiction story, it was something that I thought young people who were in my age group at that time, which would have been, between 18 and 25, could relate to. And it was initially based off of suicide. So a lot of times there's this idea that young people don't understand that, the whole, you're too young to understand love, you're too young to understand death. And so these were aspects that I had kind of pushed aside. And I noticed as I started writing that story that I was actually processing all of the feelings that I had been told that I was too young to understand. And so in that particular story, it was telling me that, while this was my story, this is something that I think there were a lot of other people out there could relate to. And it was something that I wanted to make sure got out into the world.
Yeah, so you wrote something that not only the world needs to hear, but the world can relate to. I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Before we get into the next question, I'm gonna go ahead and read your summary because it kind of digs into that. Your book, The Burning Queen, is a story about family challenges. Number one, learning to trust and the potential for redemption.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a special piece of work to be banished from hell. And Valdez is a special piece of work, queen of torture and despised by most. Others sought her position and her power. Ooh. Busy ruling the flourishing 13th kingdom, Valdez forgot rule number one: everyone in hell is out for themselves. Stripped of her power and banished to the upper world, Valdez now fights her way back into the fold. Sent to Valdez's state her hunger for torture, hell's champion, Jazar defective, no longer a patsy for her father, not Nadius, he
Inatus.
escapes.
Mm-hmm.
Say it again.
It's Inatus.
Inatus. Okay, got you. See, I
Mm-hmm.
want to say the words right. I got you. I love it. He escapes the heart of hell to reinstall his queen and restore her dying kingdom, convincing Inatus that Valdez didn't betray him is a daunting task. And until they determine who planted the seed of deceit and why the couple must tread lightly, their journey to the truth is fraught with dangers and lands designed to bring even the strongest demon to their knees. But hell hath no fury like Valdez, scorn, and her greatest challenge will be coming face to face with a destiny, not of her desire, nor of her choosing. Okay, I'm ready to read. Yes, come on,
That's the
summary. Yes, the summary. I love that. Okay, you took me there. I love this. So, what was the process like? The writing process? Did you come up with your title first and build around it, or was the manuscript first? How did that happen?
This really was about the characters themselves. So for me, typically, when I work on a story, title is the last thing. And even in that, even if it comes to me during the writing process, there's no guarantee that the title that I start out with will be the title that I end up with. But in this particular work, it really was about the characters. It really was about the runt of the litter proving her point. And, you know, it's designed that Valdez is the only girl of 12 boys. And so there's this assumption that she is the weakest link, but in reality, she is the strongest of them all. And so, you know, a lot of times people discount women. You know, there are this societal assumption that we are weaker or that we are emotional, and but the reality is there is strength even in those traits. And that was really what I think my characters were trying to convey in this story, that all of the things that make that the brothers assume make her the weaker are actually her greatest assets.
I love that. Yeah, so what you're looking at is her downfall. What you're trying to, say is her weak points is really what makes her who she is.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you were able to highlight that. I love it. I love it. I love it. When you think about this work, this body of work you created, what is the message, the true message behind your title, though?
That you can overcome whatever is thrown your way, and it may not necessarily be the way that you've envisioned it. So you still have to leave yourself to be open to understand that you may want something to happen in a certain way, but that may not necessarily be the way that it happens. And you need to understand there's a lesson in the way that it happens. So you may not get your ideal, but that doesn't mean that you don't come out on top.
Yes, so it doesn't mean you're not going to come on top. I love that. Can you share 3 takeaways you would like women to take away from your book reading this?
Definitely don't discount what society has assumed is your weakness. Harness, your strength from the things that people say you can and cannot do. Definitely stay true to yourself. Don't let anybody kind of sway you one way or another. If you really are listening to yourself and listening to your intuition and understanding what you really know, then go with that. And don't be afraid to, say no to somebody, or don't be afraid to take a different path just because somebody else feels like you should do it a different way. And then lastly, just have some fun. Everything can't be about business. And as she goes through, her story, there are times where she still has to find love. She still has to be able to, enjoy and understand that she finds joy in, what she's been through. So make sure that you don't let anybody steal your joy.
Yes. At any moment during your writing process, did you experience writer's block? What tips do you have for overcoming it?
So I don't consider it writer's block. I call it writer's avoidance. I'm the
Okay.
queen of writer's avoidance. I very much, over the years, have learned what my process is. You get a lot of people that want to say, you have to write every day. That doesn't work for everybody. You're not a real writer unless you block out a certain amount of time and all. But what I discovered for myself is that I write in cycles. So probably the one thing I really would want writers to pay attention to is, if that's your case. If you need deadlines, then set deadlines. If you are the person who really needs the structure of a writing schedule, then by all means, do that for yourself. But find what works best for you. And so you'll have less of the writer's avoidance. And even when you run into it, sometimes that's, your process telling you it's time to step away. You need to kind of let this go, let this simmer, and come back to it. It took me 5 to 6 years to actually write this entire book. And I was okay with that. There are a lot of people, oh, well, people are putting out books every day. That's not my MO. So definitely know, number one, why you're doing this. And then finding out what strategies work best for you for your process, and then implement those things so that when you feel like you are getting overwhelmed, or you feel like you just hit a wall, be okay with walking away, or be okay with changing your structure, changing the place where you write or how you write. And that'll get you through that avoidance area or that block.
I like that avoidance area. And I like being able to call it that instead of the writer's block, because I get what you said and I can resonate to that. Some people don't write every day.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to be transparent and say, you know what, it took you 5 years. Because
Mm-hmm.
some people are, listening in and they're like, ooh, I've been working on this for 2 or 3. And, maybe I'm not a real writer. But no, it takes time
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
develop a story and develop what you want to say. So I love that. I love your transparency. Take me through the first moment you held your book in your hands. What did that feel like for you?
So for this one, it really was an accomplishment, just because there had been times where I come back to this manuscript and I'm looking like, yeah, I don't know if I can really finish this one. And there are some stories that I have come to terms with that they may never be done. And again, you have to be okay with that. But there were still bits and pieces of me that would bring me back to this story every few months or every couple of years. And so it really was a sense of accomplishment, that even after all of this time, that it all wasn't lost. And it made me realize that while I may have 20 other works in progress that are sitting there, they'll finish themselves in the time they're meant to be finished, if they're meant to be finished. And in this case, having that in my hand confirmed that it's okay to take as much time as the story needs to be told.
Yes. What would you say was the most challenging part of the writing process?
So there are a couple of places in the book where I kind of had to face, I guess, my own demons. Even though, again, it's fiction, they're still a part of yourself. And there's some places where I was like, no, I really don't want this to happen. And so there was an internal fight to tell the story the way my characters wanted the story to be told. And the challenge is finding the balance, the happy medium, where the story is saying this is what it needs to be, and my mind is saying, but I'm not ready to write that, and just chipping away with it. So I had to change my perspective on how I was approaching the story, and instead of trying to hold on to the reins and make it be what I wanted it to be, I had to let the story evolve into what it needed to be.
Yes, that is a challenge. Wow. What key tips do you have for marketing your book and getting it out to the masses? How did that work for you?
So that's something that's fluid. There, depending on what your genre is, depending on what your approach is, depending on whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Um, there are a lot of different ways to approach that. And you can't necessarily compare your way or compare your work and what's been working for other people with what's going to work for you. So definitely don't be afraid to try things. Approach it though in a strategic manner. So if you're going to do advertising, like regular, like Facebook ads or Amazon ads, then don't try to run them all at one time. Find a couple in one platform, run those, see what kind of feedback you're getting. Are you getting people who are engaged? Are you getting people to click on the links? Was that your intent? Were you trying to build your newsletter? So did you get people added to your newsletter, or were you trying to get people to go out to a site and purchase your book? So you have to know when you're walking into it what your goal is. But be okay with strategizing and doing a little at a time and seeing what works best for your work and the genre that you're writing in. So that's kind of a real key thing. For some people, they really can't just do go into so somebody who's writing a nonfiction book, when you're going out and doing presentations, you want to encourage people to buy your book. That may not necessarily work as well for fiction, but if you're writing speculative fiction like I am, you find conferences, or you find groups, or you find organizations that's what their focus is, and then you focus your attention on trying to get their attention, selling to them what benefit they get from reading your book, even if it's entertainment.
Nice insight. What audience is your book written for specifically?
So I was definitely looking for older people. So the type of language that I tend to use, I am looking for people who are looking, one, for speculative fiction, who are looking for Black authors writing speculative fiction, and that's science fiction, fantasy, horror. I do fairy tale retellings as well, but I am looking for a much more mature audience, just because I do lean a little bit towards my writing being literary versus contemporary. And so you'll get a little more structure. So I'm looking for people who, or my audience really is people who are, college educated. That's kind of my focus. It doesn't mean that other people can't enjoy it, but my focus really is for people in their 30s and up, Black people. There's this idea that we don't read these stories, that we definitely this idea that we don't write these stories. And so I'm in that place where I'm trying to indicate that, yeah, we do. We may not get the marketing, we may not get the advertisement that a lot of the traditionally published authors do, but that doesn't mean we don't exist. And we have our own little niche. And, that's where I focus my, is trying to find my audience, one person at a time, one voice at a time. You have to do that word of mouth.
So, personally, we talked about marketing for other people earlier, but how personally are you using social media as a writer yourself?
So I'm not necessarily big on social media. That part I really am, even though I am a introvert. I do find that I actually get more engagement and more interaction at conventions, and I do tend to find some of the smaller ones, or I even go out to my local library. I got to know my librarians, and whenever they have events, they're reaching out saying, hey, we have these events and what have you. And so for me, the person to person interaction is more what my focus is on. I do some Facebook ads. There are a couple of groups that are geared towards people who are looking for diverse speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, Afrofuturism, all of those. And so, when I do have releases, they definitely allow us to say, hey, these are our new releases. So, any groups that allow that type of interaction. But typically social media isn't necessarily my focus when I do my marketing.
Okay, great insight, great insight. Share with us, we're all about sharing the wealth here. So share with us the people or either companies that had a hand in help creating your project.
So definitely, um, Milton Davis, who is the owner CEO of MV Media, he really has been a staple for me to encourage me and to bring, up to the forefront. He's had anthologies that he releases through his company, trying to get people to understand that, again, there are Black people in America who write speculative fiction. I love my editor, Tam Jernigan. She holds me accountable, not just on the editing side, but if I'm slacking on, I said I was going to send these pages, or trying to encourage me to again keep writing. Definitely, James Wesley Price. He's another fellow author that I have known for probably most of my career. And again, it's somebody who, get somebody I can bounce my ideas off of, somebody who can say, hey, yeah, that sounds a little suspicious, or, that doesn't necessarily seem like it goes with the story. So definitely, you know, having that person to encourage me. And then just, a couple of the groups on Facebook, definitely the Atlanta Futurism group, which is one that Milton has kind of helped us get together, as well as the State of Black Science Fiction, which is actually a really big group on Facebook that, again, has a lot of people who are readers and writers of the genre.
Excellent, excellent team. Tell us 5 misconceptions that people have about becoming an author that you've heard.
Oh, where to start?
Right.
So the first one is that you're gonna make a whole lot of money real quick. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. You would those are lottery odds of that happening. Um, for me, one is that writers and authors are the same. For me personally, being a writer and being an author are mutually exclusive. So I will always be a writer. I will always write. Being an author is a business, and it has to be treated as such. So just because you're not good at the marketing part, just because you're not good at, say, the editing and all, doesn't necessarily mean you're not a writer. It just means that you may not have the drive to be an author, which goes into that, that third misconception, that as an author, you have to do the work. Even now, if you are traditionally published, you still have to do legwork. So you don't just hand over your manuscript and think that some company is going to, or an editor or agent is just going to immediately love your stuff. There's plenty of other competition. Um, and even if you get that big deal, you're still going to have to do some of the marketing. You're still going to have to go to events and get your name out there. You can't just rely on the publishing companies to do that, because those days are pretty much over. Next would be that no means no. So no may mean no right now. So don't get discouraged by the no's. And if you are trying to go the traditional route, you will get a whole lot of no's. Or the odds are you'll get a whole lot of no's before you get a yes. Doesn't necessarily mean that your work is bad. It could be that there is some room for improvement, or it could be that your it's not fitting what's currently selling in the market. And so don't be discouraged about that. Just know that no's are part of the business, whether they come from agents, publishers, editors, or whoever. And the other misconception, again, is that this is not a business. It's a business. Whether you believe it or not, even being a writer is a business. You have to commit the time to it. It's not a fly-by-night type deal. And if you're going to treat it as a business, you need to treat it as a business. So you need to get your paperwork in order. You need to have your copyrights. If you're going to really be pushing it, depending on which area you're in, you may need insurance. You may need to be bonded. you may need business licenses and all. So, if you think that, oh, I've just slapped my name on a book and put it on Amazon, that means that I'm a published author. On some level, that may be it. But if you really want to get your message out to a lot more people, you have to treat it as a business, and you have to actually do the work, be organized as a business, and approach what you're doing as an author as a business. You're muted.
Thank you. I heard a lot of those misconceptions myself. So great insight. Being able to understand that, you know what, this is what I've heard. This is the truth. So that's a good way to look at that. Where do you hope to see your book next?
So I've got a couple that I actually have one story that I keep trying to force it to be a book, and it really shouldn't be a book. It really should be a screenplay. So I in my mind, I'm trying to again wrap my head around the idea of letting it go. The Burning Queen itself, I actually could see bits and pieces of it as a short film, maybe not necessarily a feature length film, but I've been through the whole that moment of and excitement of seeing a book in Walmart, like actually in a physical store. But I really just would like to see it in the hands of more people who are going to read and enjoy it. There's always the challenge as an indie author of finding people who believe enough in you to try your work. And typically, once I get people to try my work, they go back and they're hunting down the other stuff. But it's the initial trying to convince someone that just give it a try. If it's not for you, I'm okay with that. That's fine. It's not for everybody. But getting it into the hands of people who love this type of writing anyway, and then encouraging those who kind of on the fence, they want to try it, but they're not quite sure where to start, and get my book in their hands, and hopefully ignite a love for the genre.
And that's a process I appreciate. That's a process I definitely appreciate. Being able to say, you know what, this is where I've been, this is where I'm at, but I want more people just to put it in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good place to be. If you could go through this process all over again, from start to finish, your books, is there anything you would change?
The fighting with myself, the holding on to the reins. I lengthened the time it took me to write the book specifically because I was fighting myself with it. So if I knew, then what I know now, and I had to do it all over again, I really would let go. And that's something that I take forward, as I'm working on newer works. Whenever I feel like I'm getting into that place where I'm trying to direct the story in a certain direction, I know, and I tell myself, you know what, let me walk away from this and come back. And it gives me the reprieve that I need. It gives me the breathing room, and it gives me the opportunity to let it go and then come back to it and let the story itself tell me where it needs to be.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. Um, when, if you would have to give us a definition on what it means to be a pretty woman hustle, what a pretty woman hustle means to you, what would you say?
Ask me the question one more time.
If you would have to give us the definition, your personal definition, when you hear that name, pretty woman hustle, what would you say?
Somebody who is, a woman who is authentic with herself and is doing what she feels like she needs to do in order to elevate to the next level. So yeah, it's the
Yeah.
knowing where you come from, knowing where you are right now, and knowing what's on the horizon, working your way up to it.
Yes, I love it. All right, for those listening in, for those watching, for the people who are gonna look at the replay, I thank you for joining us tonight. I thank you for listening in. I thank you for learning more about her and her amazing body of work. But we ain't gonna stop here, okay? I want you to head on over to her site, AzizaSphinx.com. AzizaSphinx.com. And we'll have that in all of our descriptions. I want you to go connect. If this genre feels like it's something for you, even if you're like, you know what, let me just see, check it out. Check it out. Anything you would like to share before we go?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I've had a good time. And I definitely just want everybody to, take a chance, go find an indie author, even if it's not necessarily in speculative fiction. I actually do write African American fiction too, thrillers and all under a different pen name. It's under Mightier, right? So if you go to my site, you'll see that as well. But just, give them a chance. Not every African American book is street lit. So, start to think outside the box, start to look outside the box, and come find the rest of us, because we're out here. We have stories to tell. We have stories we want to share. We want you to learn from us, and we want to be able to learn and talk to you all.
I love it. Thank you. All right, y'all. Pretty Woman Hustle. Catch us on the next episode. Watch out, because you'll see more of her soon. Thank you.